And, folks, an impressive win on the road. Seawolves make their way to Orono, Maine, and they grind it. Very impressive victory for the Seawolves. Their third in a row, 22-17, the final score. Managed to hold Maine off at the end. But the most important thing here is that they're making the second half of the season entertaining. What are their playoff chances? Well, not great. But they're definitely making a go of it. 4-5 overall, 3-3 in the conference, which puts them into a logjam with a bunch of other teams in CAA. And what's even more interesting is that they get to aim upwards a little bit in the standings when they take on Villanova this coming Saturday, and they finish their season at home against Albany. So, Ken, you saw the game. What impressed you the most?
It is gritty. It was a gritty road win, and an important win. Obviously, not just in terms of the game in particular, but as you stated, the season. There's still hope for this team in conference play. Now that they're at 500 again for the first time in what's been a couple years, 2-3 years, since the team was at that mark. And again, they started on a losing streak and were able to turn it around with a big upset against number 14 Delaware. And that really, I thought, shifted the gears for this team, where you started to see them really start to excel on both ends of the field, especially offensively, where they struggled for a lot of the season. Obviously, go back a couple weeks before to that overtime loss against Rhode Island, 21-14 loss at Towson back on October 9th. And I spoke last week. I said, could this break, this bye week they had last week, hurt the team? And, the possibility was certainly there that momentum gets lost having the week off. But they started right out the gates, back where they left off in the win against Richmond. And they're close to blowing it, but the defense, I thought, was really key in the victory, winning the turnover battle 3-1, and Tyler King coming with a big interception case.
I was about to say, honestly, the same thing. The game-sealing interception, I thought that was pretty cool because it was one of the first of his career. I think that's huge. And I was just overall pretty impressed with their performance. I just was watching a recap of the game, and I agree with everything that Kenneth said, and I'm just pretty amazed of how far they've came from, when we were talking about the last couple of weeks.
Well, here's where we start war in CAA. You got your top three who've pretty much been in the top three all year long. James Madison, Villanova, and William and Mary. Madison and Villanova are 5-1, William and Mary 4-2. Then you got a bunch of 3-3 schools. Rhode Island, Delaware, Elon, Stony Brook, and Towson. Maine dropped to 3-4 with the loss. And Richmond, New Hampshire, 2-4. And Albany finally won a game. They're 1-6, 1-8 overall. So
yeah,
your top three are most likely to go to the tournament. Again, remember, this is not it's not a conference tournament. We're talking about the NCAA. We're talking about the FCS tournament, and usually the CAA sends the top three. But the third spot, when you're only a game out of it with 2 to go, that's up for grabs now.
Yeah, there's a lot riding on the next 2 weeks. And really for every team now, with how close it is, as you just put, Matt, it's a must win for every team. I guess you always the one exception. I'm pretty sure they're eliminated already. So they have really nothing to gain. But yeah, everyone else is virtually still fighting for a spot. They hypothetically end up with several teams with a 5-3 record at the end of this conference season. And who knows how, they're going to determine who sends who to the FCS. So for Stony Brook, this weekend is their biggest in quite a while. I think you got to go back to 2017 since the last time they were in the hunt for a playoff spot this late into the season. And again, it was the offense really picking up. He's really starting to get their groove. Tyson Lawn, for example, and redshirt sophomore kicker Angelo Hugo-Mello, they were responsible for all the Stony Brook scoring, but they were instrumental in that win and really controlled the tempo in the first half, allowing the defense to kind of, relax get that rest in the first half, and then really step up in the second, as opposed to what we've seen at the start of the season, where the defense really had to, break their backs, keeping the Seawolves in the game. The offense just gives up the ball on an interception or a fumble. So, this team, I think they're really starting to hit their groove, and it couldn't come at a better time. And considering they already upset Delaware, a nationally ranked team, this is a 50-50 game with Villanova. Okay, Albany, not only is it a must win, it's a should win. But with Villanova, this is their best shot to win this contest now than at, I think, any point over the last few years.
Yeah, because they're only a game. Well, they're tied for the best record in the conference at 5-1. They're only a game behind James Madison overall record, but that doesn't really matter quite as much. Might matter in terms of seeding, but Villanova finds itself at a bit of an impasse because they're facing a red-hot Stony Brook team, and then they have to go to Delaware to finish out their season, which is going to be no mean trick. Yeah,
defensively especially, I think you rank these teams. JMU, obviously, I think, to me, is the best overall offense-defense. Nova's got to be right behind them, I'd argue. And then Delaware defensively, I know they look bad against Stony Brook, but take that game out, and they're right up there with the Seawolves, who I think defensively have the third, fourth best. It's probably a tie, in terms of who has maybe the third best defense in the conference. And just looking at the statistics, Villanova, they're giving up about 16 points per contest defensively. Stony Brook's right behind them with Delaware at 20 points per contest. So, these are two very tough defenses to crack. And they're so good, obviously, at not only getting to the quarterback. Look at Stony Brook. They have 15 sacks overall in conference play and had some big stops last game, as I said before, forcing a turnover, getting 2 big interceptions, King being the biggest one at the end while Maine was driving down the field. So it's going to be a game. It's going to be a rough one, obviously, for the offenses and the quarterback. But it's one where Stony Brook has a really good shot because good their defense has been, how consistently good that defense has been.
I'm really impressed as well at how the Seawolves have turned things around. 3 weeks ago, we were worried about, well, first of all, the main reason why they've turned things around. I think the defense has always been there.
Yes,
the offense,
it's the offense, man. Yeah, and honestly, all you got to do is look at the first half of the main game to see how much this offense has improved from the start of the season. Now, the offense was honestly dead to rights, especially in the first half of games during not just conference season, but honestly most regular season games. This game, in the first 2 quarters alone, they held the ball for 22 of the 30 allotted minutes. They outgained the Black Bears 250 to 89. And that's not even including Tyson Lawton and Guglielmo Melo's scores to make it a 16-7 lead at the half.
And what were we talking about in the first few weeks of the season? If this offense learned how to eat up time of possession and not turn over the ball, they will have done their job. And they're doing it exactly the way that we said they needed to.
And we always talk about how good Tyson Lawton is. 96 yards, 26 carries, had a rushing touchdown and a catching one, his first of his career. And Casey, you could attest to this as well. I thought the passing game, well, maybe not up to the standards as most of, the conferences. I thought the passing game was well, and Fields did a good job getting his receivers involved, like Khalil Newton and Hunter Hayek, Sean Harris Jr.
I agree. I think that, Newton also made those 3 catches, and he was, I don't know, I like with everything, I just think they, like 3 weeks ago when we were sitting here talking about it, I don't know, like I just had not like no hope, but I was like, are they going to be able to like step up offensively? And they were able to do it. And I'm excited to actually see how they play the next game.
Yeah, and with that offense too, Matt, as we said, we've been speaking about Lawton all season long. We know how good he is. But I think, again, getting him involved in the passing game is great because it caught the Black Bears off guard defensively as well, that he was going to be an option that Fields could pass to. I think it helps strengthen that relationship between Fields and Lawton because we know how close they are off the field, on the field especially, But if it's not Fields running with the ball, it's definitely Lawton who is commanding that backfield. But at the same time, it adds another dimension on top of, as Casey said, getting Sean Harris Jr., who's always involved. He's essentially Fields' favorite target, has been since the Archbishop slept in that days back in high school. Those 3 catches. Cleo Newton got 3 catches of his own. I think he led the team with 45. Hunter Hayek with 3 grabs. He had 40 yards as well. Getting those receivers involved, sharing the ball, spreading the wealth, and them getting adequate results as well, with those 40-plus yards, that has been instrumental in how the Seals were able to jump out to such a big lead and ultimately hold on to it when the Black Bears started clawing back in the second half, Matt.
The defense and then the offense in particular stayed within itself, which is what we were asking them to do all along. They've figured their game out, and they're now executing their game to a very high level, which is what Villanova, I am sure, are taking a very long, hard look at, because they're going to be facing a different team from the first half of the season. They have to look at those 3 wins in a row, 3 big wins in a row, and see how they did it. And when your offense is taking care of the ball the way these guys are, the only way you can really break them up is take away one aspect of the game. You take away the run, you take away the pass. The balance that the Seawolves use is very heavy on run because they're getting yardage. As the run is effective, they'll run all day. They'll throw a couple of passes to keep people honest, but that's about it.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because what's going to make the Nova game so fun is that I think Nova has a rushing offense that's equally as significant and powerful as the Seawolves. Just looking at the statistics in conference play, Seawolves are 3rd in the conference with 154 yards per game on the ground. First is William & Mary with 220. Second is Villanova with 164. And they have really relied heavily on that of Justin Covington, who was a big factor in Villanova's win last time out, a couple of seasons ago, as well as a great tandem between him and Jalen Jackson. Those two have really been a big part of that Villanova offense, allowing them to add that dimension on the ground, as well as produce over the year as well, with Rajon Pringle being a big factor in the passing game. 432 yards on the season, 3 touchdowns, 3rd best in the conference.
And we have to mention this. The last time these two teams met, Stony Brook pulls out a massive upset on the road. But this is 2019, I should say. This is 2 years ago. 2 years ago.
But
it was also the high watermark for the Stony Brook team because then they lost their last 4 games.
Yeah, that was I think their second win of conference season, and that was their last one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I write up the 2020 where we couldn't play the final game due to COVID. I write that season off. It's almost like the 05-06 NHL season. They didn't play.
Yeah.
I mean, just wipe it from memory. That's why I say last year, I'm referring to 2019. But it is the last time these two teams met at Villanova. And it was a hell of a game. Unfortunately, it was a bad harbinger of things to come.
No, I was just saying it was like a really close game. Like, it was crazy.
Yeah, it was really down to the wire. And again, it goes back to that. That was a game I thought Stony Brook really escaped by the skin of their teeth. And both wins that season, they did it. Obviously, Tykel with the big rush at the Rhode Island game that they won. And that one as well. There was, I think, an offensive line blunder where there was a holding penalty on a passing play when all Nova had to do was kneel on the ball and milk out the clock. That allowed Stony Brook to march down the field and ultimately kick a game-winning field goal as time expired. So we always talk about the players on the field, but again, some of the games are won and lost based on coaching gaffes. A couple of Stony Brook ones have unfortunately gone the other way because of things like that. So it's about the mental as much as it is the physical on the gridiron. And I think both teams are going to have to be on their game. Nova, I think, is going to play with a bit of an edge because there are guys from that game 2 years ago where, quite frankly, they should have won. As I stated before, guys like Pringle, their rushers as well, being involved heavily in that game. And, they're definitely, I don't think, they haven't forgotten about the game, put it lightly. And Stony Brook hasn't either because, like the past 2 weeks have shown, these games can go either way. And Stony Brook is in it now just as much as any other team, any other good team over the past few weeks. And that's something that we haven't been able to to say about this team for a long time, Matt.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you bring up physical versus mental errors. Okay. When I played Little League Baseball as a kid, that was where I first heard it from my coaches.
Mm-hmm.
You know, physical error, you drop the ball, okay.
Bounce off the glove, yeah.
Mental error, you throw to the wrong base, that's not okay. Okay, those are things you can control. If you make mistakes on the things you can control, that's not good. If there are things you can't control, then you can't control them. But most cases, if you control the things you can control, you'll be successful. And I think that's where what we're seeing with this team is that, in particularly with the offense, because they have definitely the most improved unit on the team. But overall, they got it down. They got the game plan down, and now it's just a matter of who executes it better.
Yeah, and quickly before we shift gears to soccer, this team is speaking on the mental. A couple years ago, last season, first season, this was a team that made a lot of mistakes. A lot of unsportsmanlike penalties or roughing penalties. They're averaging, at the start of regular season, they're averaging about 80, 90 penalty yards per game. They've gotten it down to under 50, which is good for 6th overall. Villanova actually leads the conference in terms of penalties drawn with 72, or penalties committed with 72 yards per game. So, it's definitely, I think, also shown how this team has improved and where they've improved, not only on the field, but again, also just studying in the locker room and just having that discipline that they've really been lacking since 2018.